Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm here at the March 2023 PDAC Metal Investors Forum. I'm here with Darwin Green. He's the CEO of Highgold Mining. Highgold trades as HIGH on the Venture and HGGOF in the US on the QB, I think. Darwin is here to talk about a couple of things. One, of course, is the main project, Johnson Tract in Alaska. Any of you that know of or own the stock will obviously be familiar with that, million-ounce high grade. But I think the timing is particularly good for this story because of a plan that Darwin announced a couple of weeks ago that will involve spinning out the non-Alaska assets into a separate company. I really like some of those assets as exploration. Very nice looking targets. I mean, I think they have really good potential, and it'll be a new tight shell that current shareholders of Highgold, the shareholders on the day of record, whenever that is, a couple months out, they will be getting some of this stock as a bonus. So I think that bonus alone is a good reason to own the stock, but of course there's other reasons as well. Let's start with what you're planning this year at Johnson Tract. I mean, that is the main asset, and it will be the only asset, I guess, of Highgold in a couple months.
Yeah. Well, it's very much a dual track approach. We've got lots of exploration upside. Last year, we were having some success defining a new zone, the Ellis Zone, that was 4 kilometers away from our main deposit. I think we have 7 hits now, better than 100 gram meter type intersections. There's been 30 odd holes drilled there now. One of our core objectives this year is to get some additional drilling in that and be at a point where we can generate a resource estimate, a maiden resource estimate for, after all those results come in. So sometime late this year, or early next. In addition to drilling around the main deposit, and then we've got some really attractive targets that are just south of the main deposit, sort of some lookalike geophysical signatures that we're pretty keen on.
Is this new stuff?
Yeah, just stuff we haven't tested before. Okay. I mean, the funny, as geologists, we see gossinous rocks in the hills, and we get drawn to them like moths to a flame, but those same rocks track into the lower parts of the property, lower valley parts where they're covered with overburden and you don't see it, but that same trend is there. So we've kind of overlooked some of those areas till now. When you actually look at the geophysics, and a little bit of past drilling has identified some pretty attractive targets right on trend of the main deposit to the south, which is actually a great place to find more because it would obviously fit right into any sort of mine development that's close at hand. So that's the exploration side. In addition to that, we're doing quite a bit of sort of engineering, environmental baseline permitting related work. We want to put ourselves in a position where we can get underground for exploration and have road access to the property. We think those are really critical de-risks. That's not going to happen overnight, but it's stuff we're working on very actively. Perfect world, you coincide with having twice the resource plus all these things in hand, and that's a beautiful place to be with a resurgent market in a year or two. Right.
Well, and when you did your presentation today at MIF, I mean, you did touch on something that I think, could be a really attractive option, and that's DSO, direct shipping ore. That's something you're going to look at as one of your main scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real option of you can do a standalone mine operation where you build your own mill and tailings facility and all the other trappings that come with building a mine and the permitting associated with that. Or something you can look at is actually just because we're so high grade and because we're so close to the coast, you can just drop it on a barge, and then once it's on a barge, your costs are very cheap. You could even look at sending it to Asia, but what we're looking at right now, there's a handful of either operating mines or development projects within sort of the Pacific Northwest that we think would make attractive destinations. And what's so attractive about that is that you really reduce your capital expenditure to put something. So the hurdle to put a project in production is much lower. Your execution risk is much lower, and your timeline is much lower. I think one of the challenges with North American projects is it's sort of, very long drawn out permitting schedules. And there's an example in Alaska of exactly this, where there's a senior gold producer. It's Kinross. They did a JV with a company called Contango that had 1 million ounces. It's 250 miles away by road, but they made a decision to put that in production. They started permitting and they're starting construction and expect to be actually producing gold, not just building their mill, but
Right.
producing all of that within the span of 2 years.
It's fast.
And so that's a very attractive. And on top of all that, I think there's a lot of senior producers now that are seeing the real value, because there's so much effort to build a center of milling and processing and employees and all of that,
Yeah.
is to maximize the value of that. So it's something we're looking at internally. You're not in control of your own destiny to some degree, and that you need them to want your ore.
Right.
But when there's logic, right?
Right. No, it seems to make a lot of sense, and it's a good deal for. I mean, you've obviously looked at it. It's a good deal for Contango, I guess.
It is. I
them.
mean, for example, they have about 250,000 gold equivalent ounces of reserves that will be produced over 4.5, 5 years. They have a Canadian market cap of 250 million. We've got 1 million ounces that we own 100%. That's higher grade, and we've got a market cap of 50 million. So, that gives you an idea of how the market values those sort of near-term production stories, lower risk production stories. So, yeah.
Yeah, and now on the spin out, that's assets in the Yukon and in Ontario. The Ontario assets would be familiar to shareholders because you've done exploration programs for the last 2 or 3 years there, and you continue to increase the size of holdings. I find the Yukon stuff kind of fascinating, partially because it's in an area that's obviously really hot right now. So I think the market's going to pay attention. But this is, it's interesting to note you guys are not Johnny come latelys to this belt.
Yeah, we were Johnny come way, way early.
Yeah. You were actually the guys that were in there at the start.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, actually. I mean, it was hats off to the Snowline guys,
Yep.
Scott and Ron Berdal, and
Yep.
a father-son prospecting group and Scott's a very sharp geologist, and they were out there staking this exact same time we were in 2010 and 2011. And what we were both looking for at the time was a Nevada-style deposit, because there was a big discovery made by ATAC, and we staked, felt like half the Yukon, huge tracts of land,
Yep.
based on just government geological data sets, regional silt chemistry, and usually you do it in reverse. You do all this work, find something interesting and stake it, but
Yep.
we had to go in all in, and we did. We staked 5,000 claims. We spent a summer working up there, and we were able to fast track what we did. You'd send crews out that would do a sort of a contour base of slope soil line or a ridge and spur type soil line, grabbing a bag of dirt every 100 meters. If we got any kind of anomaly, we followed up, and we had a little on-site lab that allowed us to follow up. I was actually running the project at the time, it was 2011. And that led to being able to advance these projects quite far in one season, where we had these big, beautiful gold and soil anomalies. One problem, they weren't Nevada-style systems.
Right.
That's what we were looking for. They were intrusive related systems. And those are great systems. They're huge endowments of gold, really big. There's a couple operating mines, Fort Knox and Victoria Golds, but they're generally lower grade. We're a long ways out there, and the market kind of took a nosedive, and everything, the lights went out basically in 2012.
Right.
They sat there, and we had other priorities. Well, we've had these the whole time through the spin out from Constantine to Highgold. We just never talked about them until Snowline went and drilled what I think is probably the most significant gold discovery of 2022. And, when you can see 8 to 10 million ounces, well, too much work there with the span of 25 holes. So we've got this thing, it's drill ready. It's an exciting freebie right now that is a real great swing for the fences target, coupled with, obviously in Timmins, that's ground zero for gold production in Canada, man. It's a great place to be. It's so mature. The challenge there is getting sizable land packages that you can do anything with. But we've been able to do that over the last, it's probably 12, 15 years as well, slowly assemble more aggressively over the last 2 years. In one area, we've got multi-million ounce neighbors all around us. And last June, we actually announced a new discovery. It wasn't earth-shattering results, like in terms of grade, but it was 60 plus meters of 0.8 grams in a setting that's directly analogous to your neighbors next door who have 3.5 million ounces.
Right.
And it's open for follow-up. So we got lots to chase, and it's great to have this new vehicle spun out that allows us to fund it properly and get after it, so they're not starved for capital. And then it also allows Highgold itself to focus solely on Johnson Tract.
Yeah, and I guess the spin out, the idea is you'll do some kind of concurrent financing, and Highgold will hang on to its money for Johnson.
Exactly. So we'll do the details are still yet to be sorted out, but we're seeing interest. And I don't think it'll be a challenge at all to finance Newco, which is called Onyx Gold. And to help you remember, it's ON for Ontario, Y for Yukon, X for exploration, Onyx Gold.
Ah, okay. Very nice. I kind of wondered, it's like, it seemed random, but apparently it was not random. Okay, fair
That's a
enough.
good name too, solid.
Okay, Highgold Mining, HIGH on the venture, HGGOF, QB in the US. Great high-grade gold project in Highgold. Great exploration targets that will, I mean, I know you're trying to work to make sure the timing is that you, at least in the Yukon, you get to hit that thing with a drill this summer. And of course, Timmins is sort of more or less year round anyway. So,
Yeah.
So that's not as big a problem. So 2 stories for the price of 1. Now's the time to be looking at it before the spin-out's finalized and the record date comes and goes. Highgold Mining. Thanks for coming by, Darwin.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric.